Hello, my name is Camden and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be my long overdue April reading journal wrap up. I'm starting off on the first page, which is my 5-star predictions page. These were purposely left blank back in the first video in this series as I was waiting for the last couple of books on my 5-star predictions list to have cover reveals. And these are not the covers of the books that I had originally predicted. Actually, as it turns out, those books both ended up getting their published dates pushed off until 2024. That obviously was not gonna work out because I'm trying to read all of my 5-star predictions this year. So I ended up replacing them with a couple of other books that I'm interested in. Silver Nitrate by Sylvia Moreno Garcia and The Weaver and the Witch Queen by Genevieve Gornichek. On to my reading challenge. I'm just filling in these little blocks to indicate the number of books that I read this month. Obviously, as you can see, April went much better than March did. I read 10 books. I picked a really sickly, dying orange marker here. It actually looks better on camera than it does in person. It definitely looks like a little bit patchy though, so that was a poor choice on my part, but I just felt like I had to stick to it so that all the books matched. I wanted to apologize for this video going up so late in the month. Usually I try and get the reading journal wrap-up video out within the first couple of weeks, but unfortunately I was super sick a couple of weeks ago. I had strep throat and I completely lost my voice. You might still be able to hear that my voice is a little weak, but it's doing a lot better than it was previously. I also had like a raging fever for a few days, so definitely on the mend now, but that is the reason why this video did not go up on time. Skipping right over the did not finish page and the book of the month page because I didn't DNF any books, and I also didn't order any books through book of the month because none of them were really appealing to me that much. On to my spring bingo page. I'm just putting these little stars to indicate all of the boxes that I crossed off this month. So I read a cottagecore, a book with an animal sidekick, I read about mermaids, I read a middle grade, I also read a historical fantasy, East Asian folklore, childhood favorite, and hard-hitting contemporary. And doing the same on the spring TBR, just crossing off the books that I had on my TBR that I read, which was The Silence That Binds Us by Joanna Ho and Soul of the Deep by Natasha Bowen. On to my least favorite page. I kind of wish I didn't include this in my reading journal because it's just kind of boring to watch, but this is the releases that came out in April that I am looking forward to or wanting to read or wanting to purchase. You can't really see what I'm writing, so this page is a little bit pointless, but I'll use the time to answer some of your guys' questions. Last video, I asked you guys to leave any questions that you had about me or about my books or about this journal in the comment section, and I got a couple questions. Marissa asks, do you have a website or Etsy store where you sell reading journals like yours? If not, please consider making one. I have not really considered selling these just because there's not a super high amount of traffic on my channel to really make it worth it, and kind of cost me an arm and a leg to go through the process of getting this printed out and bound, and I wouldn't really expect anyone else to want to spend an egregious amount on getting one of these. So to print it off, bind it, and ship it would be a little expensive, and for me to put it online as like a digital download, anyone who wanted to purchase it would have to pay that amount, and I just don't know if that is realistic. Lollipop commented as well and said, I love your journal setup. Did you design the pages yourself or purchase? I'll be binge watching your other videos. Thank you so much, Lollipop. That's so sweet. I did design it myself. I designed it in Canva, and then, like I said, I printed it and bound it through Staples. And I'm super excited to start on designing next year's. If you guys are interested in learning more about how I made this, I could definitely make a video of me putting together my 2024 reading journal, just so you could see what the process looks like and my design process for it. Maybe I can give you some tips along the way as well. And moving on to the book reviews, which is why probably all of you are here. The first book that I read in April was An Emotion of Great Delight by Tahereh Mafi. I genuinely love reading sad books, and this book was super sad. The emotions in this one were just super raw and real and visceral, and I really could feel the characters' pain through reading this book. Basically, we're following a main character named Shadi, who is Persian and Muslim, and she's experiencing a lot of Islamophobia post 9/11, but also a lot of tragedy happening in her personal life because her brother has recently passed away, and both of her parents are in really poor mental and physical health as a result of that. I highly recommend this one, though. It was a 5-star read for me. I absolutely loved it. I honestly think it's pretty similar to Tahereh Mafi's other contemporary, Very Large Expanse of Sea, which is another one that I enjoyed. The next book that I read in April was equally sad, and that was The Silence That Binds Us by Joanna Ho. This book is following a main character named Maybelline, who is Taiwanese, I believe. She has recently lost her brother to suicide, and she's navigating high school after losing him. He was always kind of like that big brother figure in her life, a protector, kind of bridged the gap between her and her parents. And she's just trying to adjust to life without him and to living with grief. She and her parents are also experiencing some racism from members of their community who blame her parents for the death of her brother, basically saying that her parents were tiger parents and that they pushed him so hard to succeed academically that he couldn't meet their high standards, and he ended up taking his own life. Through her writing, May is trying to combat this stereotype. I ended up giving this one a 4. I did enjoy it, but I just felt that I would have liked to have a little more subtlety in the delivery of the message. The next book that I read was Episode 13 by Craig DeLuey. This one was a bit of a letdown for me. I was really anticipating reading this book, and I was excited because it has a bit of like a multimedia format where we're following a TV crew who is going to these haunted sites. And for the 13th episode, they're going to a haunted paranormal research center. Basically, I just felt like this one was a little bit hokey and underdeveloped. I didn't really find myself caring about any of the characters, and I wasn't even in the slightest bit scared while reading it, which I feel like is the point of a horror. So 3-star for me. Next, I read One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig. This book has been getting a ton of hype recently, especially on TikTok, I believe. This one was just average for me. Besides a pretty interesting and unique magic system, I didn't find anything in this book to be super groundbreaking or terribly interesting, and overall I just think this one is a little bit forgettable for me, a little bit average, and I'm not sure that I understood all of the hype surrounding this one, personally. Next was Flower Heart by Catherine Bakewell. This book is really fun. It was pitched as being like a cottagecore book for fans of Tamara Pierce, and I'm not really sure that I understood the Tamara Pierce connection here, but this one did have kind of like cottagecore / Studio Ghibli vibes to me, and I enjoyed it. It's set in Victorian times, and it's following a character who is a witch that everyone is kind of on edge about. She doesn't have great control over her powers, and as a result, the witch council wants to take her powers away. She also kind of has her mother's shadow looming over her because her mother is a bit of a rebel and has kind of gone against the teachings of the council and is a little bit of an outcast with her own coven. I kind of would have liked to see the mother's plotline get developed more in this one, but throughout the course of this book, we're basically watching one big training montage as our main character is learning to control her powers and also solve a little bit of a mystery that's going on in her town. The next book that I read in April, and my favorite book that I read the whole month, was The Adventures of Amina El Sirafi by Shannon Chakraborty. This book is following the adventures of a female pirate as she's being kind of lured back into her old lifestyle after she's been retired for many, many years. In typical pirate fashion, she is lured back in by an enormous amount of money that she's promised in exchange for finding the daughter of a very wealthy family and returning her safely to her grandmother. I really enjoyed having a more mature main character in this one. I feel like it's so rare for me to read books that have a 40, 50-year-old main character in them, and Amina was so eccentric, so badass, so funny and sassy and capable, and it was really just a pleasure to read from her perspective. Overall, this one was such a fun and well-paced quest novel, and I would highly recommend it for anyone who enjoys fantasy or is a big history buff. Oh god, I don't even want to talk about this one. The next book that I read in April was The Horse and His Boy by C.S. Lewis. This is obviously part of the Chronicles of Narnia. It is a book series that I read again and again as a kid and was one of my all-time favorite series, as I'm sure it was for a lot of you as well. I did not expect to find so many problematic things going on with this book. Looking through this one, I feel like it's pretty obvious that the Calormans are supposed to be based on Arabs, just in the way that they're described appearance-wise, the way that the country and the landscape is described, the way that the architecture is described. Everything seems to point to that it is supposed to be inspired by Arabs, but the stereotypes in this one are just so disgusting. They're described as being smelly, as being cruel to women, as marrying underage girls, being gross. A lot of really troubling descriptors in this book, so that definitely dampened my enjoyment for sure, and has really cast a bad feeling over all of my lovely childhood memories of reading this book. Next was Soul of the Deep by Natasha Bowen. Was super excited that I enjoyed the second book as much as I enjoyed the first book. I really felt like this one actually had better character development in it than the first book. We got to see more downtime in between adventure sequences with this one and got to know our characters a little bit more. So yeah, I really enjoyed the conclusion of this one. If you like West African mythology, you should check out Skin of the Sea and Soul of the Deep. They are great. The next book that I read was Daughter of the Moon Goddess by Su Lin Tan. As you may be able to deduce from the title of this book, we are following the daughter of the moon goddess, Xingyan, who is on a quest to try and earn her mother's freedom. Her mother has been imprisoned on the moon for many centuries, and Xingyan is taking it upon herself to try and get her mother pardoned by the celestial emperor and empress. I really enjoyed this book, particularly the relationship between Xingyan and Prince Liwei. I felt like they had a lot of chemistry that I really enjoyed reading about. My biggest gripe with this book was just the length of it. I feel like the last 150 or 200 pages of this one dragged a lot. Because the vibe and the tone of the second half of the book was so different, it really felt like I was reading a completely different novel, and I really feel like this author could have separated just this one book into two separate books. And the last book that I read in the month of April was The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This one is a mystery novel, and it's following a main character named Avery. Avery is a broke high school student at the beginning of this novel, but within the first few chapters, she ends up coming into a billion-dollar fortune when a mysterious billionaire writes her into his will and leaves her all of his worldly possessions. This book has a really fun puzzle and mystery element to it, and it really honestly reminds me of Truly Devious by Maureen Johnson. If you enjoyed those books, I definitely think that you should check this one out. I am a little nervous because I have heard from basically everyone that the second book just does not live up to the hype of the first book, so I'm a little bit nervous to continue on in this series, but I'm gonna give it my best shot anyway. Anyway, that is going to be all for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you can like this video, comment down below, leave me questions so I can keep doing these voiceovers, and I will see you all in a new video next week. Goodbye!